Okay, it's a great honor to introduce Mikhaila and Helen, who will lead our next session. Mikhaila Calice is a postdoctoral researcher in the Department of Life Sciences Communication, where she recently received her PhD. Mikhaila holds an MPA in Energy Analysis and Policy from the La Follette School of Public Affairs at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and a BA in Political Science and International Studies, Randolph-Macon College. Helen Asimina Tosteson is a graduate student in the Department of Life Sciences Communication at UW-Madison. She has a background in working in K-12 science education, agroecology, and has a BA in Biology and Society from Cornell University. Now we will introduce Mikhaila and Helen.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are super excited to be here today, and really just wanted to say thank you to Charles one more time because he did such a great job. And a lot of the things that he talked about, we kind of want to expand on through some activities. So this next session, we call it a roundtable. It's essentially going to be 2 parts, and we're really going to get you all interacting with each other. So this is going to be kind of like a big group not project, but like kind of group activity. You'll do some things on your own, and then you'll kind of talk about it with everyone, and we'll come back together as a group. So we really want you all to be kind of like invested in this and working together as kind of like a team on this. I will note that the activities that we're doing for all of the exhibitors and folks at the blue tables, these activities are not just for high school students. Anybody can do them. So one thing that we would like to see are that the tables are kind of evenly dispersed out. We want you all to get a chance to meet new people. This is a really unique opportunity to be able to meet people like you from different high schools, from different organizations, and potentially future employers or future schools that you might go to. So if there are any empty chairs or if there are certain tables that have less people than others, then we'll give you a second to kind of like fill those in as we're introducing those activities. So there are some for the folks, the exhibitors and folks over here, there are some empty chairs. We would love to see those filled up, or some of the tables that have less people, fill those up so that we can have some really great discussions. The first activity that we're going to do is going to be all about personal mapping. So Charles brought up that Venn diagram map that about like where you see yourself in the climate crisis, and how do you understand your own form of climate action. So there's a pink, light pink paper on everyone's table that has Venn diagrams. Everybody has them. They're not just on the students' tables. And so the first activity is going to be all about that. One second. And then the second one is going to be about arenas of influence. And this is where we're going to kind of dive a little bit more deeply into a certain area. And Helen will explain that more closely. Generally, there are some kind of broad goals that we have for these activities. We really want you to reflect on how you see yourself in the climate crisis, which you may have done a lot before, but just in this moment, given kind of where you are in your life, kind of how do you see yourself today in this space? And then we want to see where there are areas that you might overlap with your peers or some of the other folks that are at your table. And overall, we're just looking to have there be a space for you to explore avenues for your individual future action, as well as kind of collectively develop ideas for actionable next steps. So we really want you to be able to take something away from this that you can then take to your environmental groups, take to your friends, take to your families, so you feel like you have a little bit more information about what can you do and how can you kind of be that spark for other people to really be actionably involved in this. So with the first activity, I said that this is the light pink papers. We're going to give you about 5 minutes. One thing to note about these activities is they're going to go kind of quickly. We would really like you to just kind of, what are your gut reactions? What are the first words that come to mind? What's kind of the first thing that you think of when you think about, you know, what brings you joy or what action needs to be done? Just kind of jot down your initial ideas. So we'll give you 5 minutes to do that on your own. And then you're going to come together as a group and discuss kind of where there might be similarities and differences, and then we will go from there. Awesome? Okay, so I'm going to put a timer on, and in 5 minutes, we are going to bug you to talk to your neighbors. And then as we do that, since you may not have met people with you, we would also like you to introduce yourselves to the people at your table in that group discussion. So take some time and fill out this Venn diagram for yourself. Okay, take about 2 more minutes and jot down all your thoughts. If you have thoughts about the intersections between those kind of inner parts of the Venn diagram, feel free to put ideas there as well. It's totally okay if you haven't had the chance to fill everything out. The next part that we're going to do is everyone should have gotten a little pad of sticky notes on their table. Do you all see that? Little packet of sticky notes. Okay, so the next part of this, there are these kind of hot pink pages that are on the table. And these are just kind of a space for you to write notes during your group discussion. So what we want you to do is kind of with the group, we want you to introduce yourselves, maybe, where you're from, what grade you're in, what your name is, obviously. And then we want you to kind of share the Venn diagram with your group and see, what are similarities, maybe what are some differences, and then come up with some ideas for climate action in these different spaces. And each table, I want you to designate 1 to 2 people to be the either note takers and or the people that are going to bring these sticky notes up. And we have a giant Venn diagram here. So as your group kind of decides what are some collective notes that you would put in these 3 places, as well as kind of in that middle, what the climate action would look like, we want you to come bring those up and put them on the big sticky, okay? I might call on some of you to share. So just so you know, if you don't want to share, that's okay. But I am going to put some people on the spot because I want to hear what you all come up with. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, sweet. We'll give you about 10 minutes or so to discuss, introduce with your group, discuss, and come up with some stickies that you can put up on our giant Venn diagram here. I know not everyone is done sharing out, but once you have as a table have shared out, go ahead and start collectively writing some sticky notes of things that maybe you have in common or something that you all like. If there's one answer that you're like, oh yeah, that really resonates with everybody, or I really like that, let's put that on the big board. So it's totally up to your discretion. There's no wrong answers here. And as Krishna is doing right now, once you have sticky notes, go ahead and send somebody up to put them onto the different quadrants here, different Venns of the Venn diagram. If you've already put your sticky notes up, keep going. Go ahead and keep discussing, what kind of climate action might come from this, what ideas you might have of what that action might look like. You can steal it from other people. Like if you've seen other people do things in this space, take their ideas, or feel free to come up with new things that you haven't seen that you'd really like to see. We'll give you about 2 more minutes, and then we're going to share out and talk a little bit as a whole group. All right, go ahead and bring up your sticky notes. I'm going to call on some of the people to tell us what they wrote. If you had sticky notes up here that you put up that you really want to share, go ahead and come up here because I don't want to read them off for you. So we've got people putting things up now. Does anyone want to share some of the things that you all are putting up? What did you just put?
Our table realized that we're all creative, collaborative, and we all like nature in one way, shape, form, or fashion. Creativity, art, nature, and collaboration. And it just so happens that we're all a table full of women. So
Awesome. Would you like to share, Alex? What did you put up, or what's one highlight of what you put up?
My table put up that we're good at research, planning and organizing, and public speaking.
Awesome. What else? Do you want to share?
Oh, sure. Our group said that like we're all like really into nature. We all really love being outside, and we all put communication up there. Like we all love like meeting new people and talking about like things we're passionate about, especially like connected to the environment.
Cool. Thank you.
We put up helping others and climate commi- communication and education and natural nature.
We put up stuff like helping our communities, finding enjoyment in what you do, and just like helping others.
Great. Thank you. Awesome. Stephanie, do you want to close us out here with some of what you put down?
Hey, hey everybody. Yeah, my group, we put some things that bring us joy and are good at was being expressive through art and being creative. It brings us peace and brings us back center. We also said going outside and being in community. I think that encompass all these. And then something that two really cool people said at my table was sharing knowledge and knowing how to do, like complex things and then take them to something more simple to then tell people. And then the last one was building connected communities.
I really love that. That's like a great one to kind of transition to, because that's kind of like part of what we're doing here, right? Part of this is building community with each other so that there is like a group of people that you can rely on, that you can call to, that you can work with and collaborate with to try to create goals and then meet them the goals and then evaluate how you met those goals, right? And there's so much opportunity for you to learn from each other, from your peers, from mentors, from mentees as you have them. So now Helen and I are going to kind of walk around. We're interested in what do you all think is the middle section? What are some ideas for what you can do at the intersection of kind of these different aspects of yourself? We already heard from some of them. Stephanie just gave us some really great ones to end on. What else do you all think? Go ahead and just raise your hand and we'll bring the mic over. There's no wrong answer here. Cool.
Okay, we had creating a youth climate summit in our area, as well as pretty much around our table. It was a lot of desire for local opportunities. So, having so many, especially kids, students coming from such far distances, it's just, eye-opening that the need is out there, the want is out there. So if we can find something to help those resources at home, that'd be helpful.
Great. Helen, you want to give
I
it
see
to
a
a
hand
student table?
I said things like connecting to like local things that support what you want to do and bringing it like, cause so it's I'm sorry, so it's not just you connecting to local people with local people that also want to do the same things that you want to do.
So finding community orgs, local leaders that you want to talk to. Yeah.
We wrote down like education through art, like making art that's like climate activating, and also like a neighborhood initiative, like working in the neighborhood, like petitions for compost systems or solar panels, recycling education, that sort of stuff.
Anyone else? Great. That table over there.
My group talked about how we should help local groups, but more diverse groups too, and having more people of color and making resources more affordable for lower class so that we can actually have more of an impact with all this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Some support across the board. Anybody else want to end us with some more thoughts? Yeah, table 13 over there, have one.
I feel like everything I'm hearing is like around community because as humans, like we want that self-preservation and like longevity of ourselves and our people. And so I feel like yeah, just like the sustainability and wanting to connect and create an environment that where humans can exist for a long time. And so, yeah.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
So I want to encourage all of you at lunch. We've got this big Venn diagram up here. If you want to add more ideas, feel free to add more sticky notes throughout the day. All of these worksheets that you have that we've created are yours. They're yours to take home. You can bring them back to, your friends or your environmental groups. So we're going to kind of shift now because a lot of things were brought up. Charles talked about in his talk about kind of like career pathways and, professional pathways. How can you actually bring climate action into your individual, personal, professional career? We heard about like local action here. What are the ways that we can kind of actually do things at a local level? How can we build community? What does that look like? We've also talked a little bit today about kind of climate equity and climate justice and what that means. So this next activity that Helen's going to introduce and lead us through is going to kind of break us into groups that look at those three issues. So we can dive a little bit deeper with the time that we have left into some specific aspects of how we actually do this. So hopefully you can leave with some a bunch of ideas of what we can do.
Yes, thank you, Mikhaila. So the second activity, we're calling it Arenas of Influence. And as Mikhaila said, you already brought it up in your big group discussions. These three areas, I heard people talking about wanting to find local community, people talking about climate equity and justice, and also a broader theme that Charles definitely brought up earlier is thinking about your professional development as well as your own personal goals and figuring out where you fit into the movement. So for this next activity, we're going to split into 3 groups. So take a moment to think about which one of these things you want to think about for the next 40 minutes or half an hour. And move to one of the tables that corresponds to that arena of influence. So I encourage you to sit with somebody, some faces that you haven't met yet. One part of this activity is that we want to form connections with each other. So let's take the next 3 or 4 minutes to get up and move to one of these areas that you find interesting.
And if the tables fill up, just pick a different one. Totally fine if you don't get your first choice.
So it looks like people are mostly finding their tables. If you haven't found a spot yet, find an empty seat. So at your table, and I see some folks have already found the worksheets in the middle, there is a list of questions. You're going to start on the side that has the title of your focus, your arena of influence on the front. And we're going to start by taking 5 minutes to read through that first question. And after 5 minutes and answering it for yourself, we're going to take time to share as a group at your table and talk a little bit about it.
So we're doing one question at a time. Don't go ahead. So focus on that first question. We'll stop you and kind of tell you when to start talking as a group, but take a couple minutes to do it yourself. And just like the last one, it's your gut reaction, whatever comes to mind. You don't have to have answers to this. There's no wrong answer here. Take another couple minutes. And then once people are done, you can kind of come together as a group to discuss that first question. What'd you put down? Are there any similarities? Are there differences? If you are ready, go ahead and start sharing answers to that first question or first prompt there. The people around you, you can introduce yourself again.
All right, folks. I know you might still be sharing about that first question. These are deep questions, but for time's sake, we're going to start moving on to the second question on the sheet. So if you haven't gotten there yet, take some time to think about it and then share out again with your group.
Even if you haven't gotten all of your ideas down, go ahead and start to discuss what you jotted down with your group for that second prompt there. What'd you guys come up with? Or collectively as a group, come up with some ideas.
All right, folks. For time's sake, if you haven't yet gotten to that third set of questions, now's the time to move on to that third set of questions. We're going to take about 5 minutes. If you've gotten through all those 3 questions, good job. That's amazing. And there are more discussion questions on the back. I want you to focus on that last one. We're going to ask for folks to share out one action that you want to take away from this discussion at the end.
If you haven't already, go ahead and start discussing that third prompt, the questions with that third prompt.
All right, folks. I've seen that a lot of people have gotten to the back of your discussion prompts. And if you have not yet, start thinking about, as a group or individually, what is one action that you want to take away from this discussion? You can fill out some sticky notes that we'll share after this discussion on the board over there with some actions, whether it's one that you personally want to do or one that your group has in common. So take the next 5 minutes to talk about that. And then we'll do some share outs from each table. So also choose a person to share.
Each table will share one thing, and we want to make sure those are on sticky notes. And we'll put the sticky notes up on after, if that makes sense. If you have more than one idea, totally cool. You can write out multiple sticky notes. Take a couple more minutes. If you haven't already, get something on a sticky note and designate somebody who's going to share out.
The actions that you're thinking of, they can be small. You know, it can be sharing contacts with people at your table, or they can be larger goals. Okay, a minute goes by fast. We're going to take a break from these discussions. As Mikhaila said, you can continue them at lunch. And now we're going to start sharing out one action from each table. We're going to be walking around and we'll start here. What's one
Everyone
action? Yeah.
could just quiet down so that we can listen intentionally to everybody share out. There are a lot of tables here, and we want to make sure we can hear from everybody. And I know that's like a lot. So we're going to go kind of quickly, and we're going to start in that corner.
Yeah, so we have quite a few people who haven't really started with getting involved with action. So our one takeaway was doing research on pre-existing communities or doing research on how to start our own communities on our interests and what we want to specialize in.
We talked about just communicating with anyone who you can who has some influence. So it could be educators or people who are on planning committees or political representatives who have some sort of like influence or voice over others.
We said that you can apply sustainability into any job pathway that you want to take.
Awesome. And if while we're like sharing out these, if you like some of these ideas, feel free to write them on your own paper, right? These are things that you can take with you. And if you're inspired by any of the things that you hear, write a note down so that you can bring that back to your organization, your school.
Educating people about the agricultural process and the issue of food waste, and then ways to deal with it like composting.
We talked about getting more involved and then staying involved regardless of whatever path we choose to take in our future.
We said encouraging and educating others. So like really making sure that people realize that like everyone can have their own individual benefit and realizing that everyone can pass down this information to others. And from this, people can start working on any specific thing they want, like whether it be agricultural, electrical, or recycling. All of that are opportunities for people to take on.
Our group really focused on communication and education. So like spreading the word in our communities and making sure that climate and ecological issues are talked about and presented in all spaces and all communities.
My group talked about including everybody in the climate change discussion and including especially minorities and going out of our way to encourage them to take action and also showing them the resources they have and making resources more affordable. And we talked about talking to our local government and representative offices.
Well, we talked about a lot of small actions you can take, like helping with a rain and pollinator garden and rain barrels. But I really was sitting at a table with a lot of movers and shakers. We have someone from Evansville where they're installing solar at their high school. We have a climate educator who's helping the schools in Milwaukee have more natural spaces, and a lot of people working to educate people in how to fight climate change. So
we talked about connection across communities and how it's really important to have those connections with people so we can like spread awareness and make sure that people know that there are things that they can do to help with climate change.
We have community composting. I think the initiative of having composting, so the initiative of like teacher or my teacher brought in two buckets, right, to put in anything that is composting. So that is we are a community here right now. We're a community that are taking part of putting things in this separate bucket. and we are part of different communities, right? The place where we live, the place where we are right now, perhaps where we work. So imagine if we have the initiative to have a separate bucket of composting in the different locations that we are. What a what a big impact would that be? So I think even at our schools, right? Here we have the composting for the culinary program, but imagine if we have a separate bucket at every single trash can and recycle location. And that could be at, starting from elementary to, again, to where you live, to where you work. So I think the initiative of community composting, because we are part of different communities.
We talked a lot about connecting and building communities and also creating sustainable community momentum to ensure that there's continuity within communities that are working towards a goal when certain members leave and when new members join, so that action continues to keep on happening.
We talked about as like youth and people who want to get involved that you shouldn't be afraid to like reach out to people in like sustainable and environment related careers so you can like really learn more. And people in these kind of careers, they always want like more people to get involved, so it's always good to reach out.
We said reaching out to your community, school board, friends and family, and organizations to make sure they are informed about current issues and what they can do to help.
Good finding communities in the during groups during of office of affects the climate change.
We said increasing outreach within our community and for climate action, and then celebrating what action is taken.
Yeah, so we said really knowing your audience and catering to what's important to them and what their values are, and creating projects that they can really relate to.
We said how environmental misrepresentation either leads to or it overlooks environmental racism, and how people need to view cities the same way you see a forest as both our environments, and thinking about the intersectionality of things, and in the way how like climate justice is like restoration, and how the way how you think of like ecological restoration that needs to coincide with restoring like people's and communities' dignity and autonomy.
We talked about kind of diversity at the table is what makes an idea holistic. And so having, diverse voices to bring an idea to like fully encompass the community that it's serving. And I think related to that, when you come from a place of privilege, making sure and making intentional space for like voices that are more marginalized and might not have like time, energy, resources to get there on their own. And even if it like costs money, even if it costs energy, like doing that and making sure that that's something that happens is what I think environmental justice is. But then beyond that, we said it takes one to make a change and a community to take action. So supporting one another and having a community behind you, I think is what we talked about that helps bring ideas to fruition.
We were thinking that trying to connect with a wider audience that maybe previously had not had the chance to do things climate relatedly would be really important to kind of coax them out of their shell and let them take action as well, especially people who have not previously had the opportunity to maybe speak in front of lots of people without a lot of privilege. They'd be able to make a big impact, as maybe they would be impacted largely by climate change, but we might not know until we let them share their voice.
Thank you, everyone. Did we miss any tables? Amazing.
Cool. So some things that we heard, we're going to wrap up this and then go to the next thing here. And when you get an opportunity, the sticky notes that you filled out for those actionable items, you can just put just to the right of that Venn diagram. We'll just populate it on that whiteboard up there, the clear board up there, I suppose. And one thing that I heard a lot of is like building community, building connections, finding ways to communicate about these issues to build awareness. And so as you're kind of going through the day, as you bring these activities home with you, think about what does that actually mean? What does it mean to communicate about these things with different people? Those that were here last year, we talked about that a little bit, but also what does it mean to build community? We're here building some community. What does that look like in your school, in your household, in the city that you live in your family? So keep that in mind as you are kind of taking this home with you. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if you guys want to move back to your original tables, that would be great.